Hello and welcome to a bit of a different video. Today what I'm going to be doing is my personal or like what I think should be the top 25, and I'm going to like adjust them by like moving the logos around and whatnot. Yes, I do my videos in Google Slides. Kiss my butt about it. So, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's basically just like what my top 25 would be, except I'm just going to move the logos around because I thought it'd be pretty cool. So, I really don't agree. The rankings got dropped today. I really don't agree with a lot of the top 25 right now. Like, I think the top 5 is pretty solid, but I think some other spots are pretty poopy. So, first off, I almost want to change this because after all, Alabama did have to play like their first what you would call tough competition, and they lost. They lost. And Kansas won a pretty good game, and they have been doing really good. Now, I don't want to dog on Alabama because, one, they have less losses, and two, they also lost to a very highly ranked team. But there's a little bit on the inside of me that says the SEC is a little overrated, and Alabama let's say they're a part of the Big 12, would not be so strong, so dominant, so like they would have such a high record. So I think I will change this. I don't really care about the placement of it, but yeah, we'll change that. UCLA at number 4 is solid. You know, I would put Purdue in my personal opinion, but they did just lose 3 games, so I'm not going to against all unranked teams, whereas UCLA has only lost, I think, to one unranked team. I'm not really sure. I know they lost to Maryland, who was ranked and undefeated at the time. They beat them, sorry. They lost to Illinois, and who was ranked at the time, and who else did they lose to? I think they lost by 5 to Baylor. That's Kansas. Let's go ahead and pull it up here. They lost by 9 to Illinois. Then they lost by 5 to Baylor. Those were their 2 losses from there. Then they beat Maryland. They beat the crap out of Maryland. Oh, and then they beat Kentucky. So yeah, they jumped way up. Who else? I know they lost to USC. They lost at USC. Oh, and they lost at U of A. So they've lost one game to an unranked team, whereas Purdue has lost pretty much all of their. No, Indiana was ranked, but they lost to Maryland. They lost to Northwestern. Northwestern, granted, now is ranked, but Maryland isn't. Even though I like Maryland and whatnot, I'm just saying, like, in terms of committee ranking and whatnot, it looks to me like UCLA has taken like more fair losses and whatnot to keep them ahead of Purdue. But enough of that. Let's get into the big talk. Virginia should not be at number 6. In fact, I would put them like way over here. And put U of A right here. Yeah. Because, one, let's see, Texas, who did they lose to? Texas lost by 8 points to Kansas. Then they lost on the road to Texas Tech, and then they barely beat Oklahoma in overtime. I'm like, all right, they also beat Kansas State on the road. So I'm like, all right, so they took a close loss at Kansas. It's a really hard game. They took a bad loss to Texas Tech, and they almost took a really bad loss in a major rivalry game. But then I go and look at Virginia. Virginia beat Louisville at Louisville by 3 points. Beat Notre Dame at Virginia by 2 points. Beat Duke in overtime. Beat NC State at Virginia. Oh, the Duke and NC State game that they barely won were both at Virginia. They barely beat Syracuse by 5. Beat the crap out of Boston College, beat the crap out of Wake, beat the crap out of Virginia Tech, beat the crap out of Florida State. Won by 7 to North Carolina at Virginia, beat Syracuse. Lost at Pitt. It's like, to me, and they even lost to Miami by the close game, but they lost. So it looks to me like, wait, they had to have played Virginia. They had to have played Miami twice, huh? Somewhere in here. Virginia started off really low ranked, and they beat Baylor, and then they beat Illinois, which was really nice, but they barely beat Michigan by 2 points. They lost to Houston, lost to Miami, like I already said. Did they only play Miami once? Or do they only play I think they only play Miami once. So it just looks to me like, especially thinking that the ACC is a little overrated, one of the more overrated conferences, Virginia barely escaping certain wins against bad teams like Notre Dame and Louisville. Like, Louisville's really bad, and they barely beat them. And it's like, to me, it looks like U of A and Texas have had better wins and whatnot. And so let's go ahead and look at U of A. This one is a toughie. This is a little bit of a hard decision because U of A is a weird team. So U of A started off the season at number 17, and they ran over all the competition. They beat San Diego State by 17, and they beat Creighton when Creighton was healthy by 2. No, I don't want the news. Then they took a terrible loss at Utah. I don't know how that happened. And then they beat Cal. So that dropped them from 4 to 10. Then they beat the crap out of Indiana. That's a pretty good win. Then they beat Texas A&M CC. Then they beat Tennessee at U of A, to be fair. But they only move up to number 5 with 2 major ranked wins like that. Then they beat Morgan State. Then they barely beat ASU. Then they barely beat Washington. And then they lose to Washington State at U of A. That's just another terrible loss. Beat the crap out of Oregon State. Then they get slaughtered by Oregon. Then they bounce back with a win over USC and then a win over UCLA. Then they go on the road to the Washington teams, beat both of them. Then they beat the crap out of Oregon. Then they beat the crap out of Oregon State, beat the crap out of Cal, and lose at Stanford. Then they beat the crap out of Utah and beat Colorado. So U of A has not lost to a ranked team. They've lost to all unranked teams in bad games. But it looks to me, from what I've seen, is like that is a lot better. I would honestly because they've shown that they can beat all the tough teams. UCLA, San Diego State, Creighton, Indiana. Those are very highly respected teams right now, especially San Diego State, considering they have 5 losses. They play in a pooper conference, and they're still ranked. They're pretty respected. Indiana beat Purdue. They're climbing the ranks. Creighton is back in the ranking system. UCLA's number 4. U of A beat all of those teams, whereas their 4 losses come against pooper schools. They're just bad games. And from what I've seen in the games that they've won, they're dropping 80 to 90 points a game. They have extreme offense. If they're just the problem with U of A and why they really haven't broken anywhere above top 4 is if they miss their shots, they're going to lose a game because the other team, whenever U of A puts up a lot of points, the other team does too because they don't really have that good of a defense. So it really comes down to let's outscore everybody, which if U of A can do that, you're golden. But if they can't, they lose to bad teams. The one exception for outscoring like that is the UCLA U of A game, which was 58 to 52. Couldn't tell you what happened there, but what? Ball sack. That's what happened. That's enough of U of A and Virginia and whatnot. Let's move on to Baylor. Baylor took a loss to Marquette, or to not to Marquette. I would honestly move Marquette in front of Baylor because after all, I feel like there should be a little bit of a punishment for losing Baylor, even though you lost to a really solid Kansas team on the road. You got your butt kicked. You beat TCU on the road. Good. That's a good win. Whatever. Beat Baylor at Baylor, and then get your butt kicked on the road at Kansas. They lost by 16 points. That's a beatdown. But they don't move because they didn't move a spot? Really? They didn't move a spot from losing that bad against a highly ranked team. To me, it looks like, wow, dude, you got slaughtered like that. You shouldn't really be up here. Now, Marquette, they took a loss at UConn. UConn recently has been bouncing back big time. So Marquette stays at they beat Georgetown, and then they moved down one spot. That's a respectable move. They barely beat Xavier by 1 point. But to me, Xavier is a lot better than what their rank is. So Marquette only moves up a spot. I look at that as, all right, Baylor took a loss to a ranked opponent. Xavier took a win against a ranked opponent. Baylor got their butt kicked. Marquette barely won. I'm like, to me, it looks like Marquette deserves to be a little bit higher, especially since Marquette's record is overall better. And it's not like they don't have a bad schedule. They've played some very difficult teams. So, yeah, on to Tennessee. So we are just going to, we'll do like this. Tennessee should not, sorry, no. I'm sick and tired of it. Sick and tired of Tennessee being placed wherever they are. They don't deserve it. Tennessee, dude. I get Tennessee. Tennessee, yo. You beat Alabama, number 1 team in the country. Dude, huge win. But you lost at Kentucky by 12. Kentucky's a good team. I like Kentucky. I think they're a really good team. And yeah, you beat the number 1 team in the country by 9 points. That's a great win at Tennessee. But dude, like honestly, you if you can't beat the bad teams in your conference, like Tennessee has been losing a lot of games and winning a lot of very close games. Let's be real. They lost both games they played against Kentucky. They lost at Tennessee and at Kentucky. So let's go back here to we'll go back to January. So they win their first 3 games in beatdowns. Good job, Tennessee. Then they lose to Kentucky at Tennessee. They beat Mississippi State at Mississippi State. They beat LSU at LSU. They slaughter Georgia. And then they beat Texas. It's a really good streak. That's a really good job. But then they lose at Florida. Then they win by 3 points against Auburn at Tennessee. Then they lose to a buzzer beater at Vanderbilt. Then they lose to a buzzer beater against Missouri. I'm like, well, first of all, yeah, losing to buzzer beaters really sucks, and it sucks that it affects your record. But to me, I look at the facts, and even if those teams missed those shots, you're beating them by 2 points. You're beating pooper schools by 2 points. That's it. Like, there should be no reason the number 2, the number 6, the number 10, whatever your ranked team should be beating these pooper schools that aren't even ranked, not even close to you in your conference. You're only beating them by 2 points and 3 points and losing by a lot. So, yeah. And I knew Tennessee was going to beat Alabama because, one, these 2 teams are big-time rivals, and it's at Tennessee. Number 1, Alabama coming to Tennessee, like, of course, that's going to be a very hard place to play at. And I'm not going to say that was, I mean, even right here, even right here. It says number 10, Tennessee takes down newly minted number 1, Alabama. And it says Rocky Top was too much for top-ranked Alabama. Like, yeah. Tennessee had a pretty good home field advantage there. That was a nice time to have the home field. But then they travel on the road to Kentucky. And it's like, so enough about Tennessee. It's like, dude, you guys can't continue. You guys can't win games. You shouldn't be so highly ranked if you can't win games against bad teams that aren't even ranked. I get it's difficult and not everybody can do it, but you've lost like 4 fucking games in the last 2 weeks. Like, you can't, like U of A, at least they lose a game and then they win 5 games and then they lose a game and then they win 3 games and then they lose a game. You guys lost to 4 unranked opponents and beat a ranked opponent, beat the number 1 team in the country. To me, I would rather lose to the number 1 team and lose to an unranked team rather than lose to 4 unranked teams and beat the number 1 team. That's just my personal opinion, and I think Tennessee is extremely overrated. Gonzaga is kind of getting shit on. Really, they took that loss against St. Mary's in overtime, which, yeah, all right, St. Mary's is a good team. They dropped down to number 16, so they're still getting a little bit of respect. They beat the crap out of San Francisco, beat BYU, beat the shit out of LMU in an absolute annihilation, and then they beat Pepperdine. They went up 1 spot. They're 23-5. I get their conference isn't the best thing ever, but they're placed under a 6-loss team, a 7-loss team, a 6-loss team, a 7-loss team. They're placed under all of that. And honestly, if you look at Gonzaga, what they've done, some of the teams that they have beaten, it's like Gonzaga's kind of getting disrespected. So they barely beat Michigan State at like the second game of the season by a point. Then they got their butts kicked by Texas. Texas is a really good team. They beat number 4 Kentucky, at the time number 4 Kentucky. That's a big difference. Then they lose to Purdue in a beatdown. Well, guess what? Purdue became the number 1 fucking team. So they barely beat Xavier. Xavier's currently ranked like number what? Like 16? Then they lose by a point to Baylor. Baylor's number 9, and at the time they were number 6. Or like Baylor's number 9. Beat Washington, beat Northern Illinois. They beat number 4 Alabama 190. Alabama was the number 1 team and is currently the number 2 team, and they beat them. So it's like Gonzaga. Why are they ranking Gonzaga so low? Honestly, they have 2 games left. And then it's over, and they're ranked number 12. I say if they win these, they should at least get a little bit of respect by getting placed at like number 11 or number 10. Miami as well. Miami's getting a little disrespected because it's like, dude, they are a much better record team than all of these teams. They're 22-5, and let's see. So Miami, right? They beat Providence by 10 points. That's already a good win. They got their butt kicked by Maryland. I think Maryland's a really good team, but yeah, that's a pretty bad loss if you want to be ranked really high. Barely beat UCF. That's not a very impressive game at all. Beat Rutgers. That's all right. Kill Louisville. Whatever. They barely beat Cornell. 107-105. I don't really know what happened here, but Isaiah Wong scored 36 points. I don't really know what happened there. Cornell, man, what the hell? Cornell is like one of the Harvard teams. They're 16-9. I don't know what the fuck happened there. That's just a terrible game. I mean, they won it, but whatever. Then they beat NC State. NC State right now is receiving a lot of votes to be ranked. Beat some pooper school. Beat Virginia. Vermont versus Miami gets canceled. Beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. And then they take a shitty loss at Georgia Tech. But, I mean, every team has their shitty loss, you know? Beat Boston College. Lose in overtime by 2 at NC State. That's a pretty pooper loss. That just sucks that happened. Beat Syracuse. Lose by 2 at Duke. That's just another pooper loss. It sucks that it happens. Beat Florida State. Lose to Pitt. At Pitt by 3. And you guys would be like, oh, that's a terrible loss. I think Pitt is a very good team. Honestly, I'd love to rank them. I think they are one of the best teams in the ACC, if I'm being honest. Beat Virginia Tech. Beat Clemson at Clemson. Kill Duke. Beat Louisville. Beat North Carolina at North Carolina. Beat Wake. I'm like, yeah. Miami's a pretty good team. They're 22-5. Yeah, so Virginia is 21-4. They've played 2 games less than Miami has. They're 21-4. I mean, imagine if they're 21-5 or something like that. They're ranked number 6, whereas Miami's number 13. Why such a difference? Yo? Why aren't we giving Miami respect? They've beaten Virginia. They beat them. And Virginia is ranked 7 spots ahead of them. And all Virginia has is 1 less loss, and they've played 2 less games. It's like, why are we disrespecting Miami like that? And I would also like to point out that Pitt is 19-8. They're in 3rd place in the conference. They're 12-4. They've played 1 less game than Miami. If they win their next game and Miami hasn't played yet, they will be ahead of Miami. What the hell? Why is Pitt not ranked? Why is Pitt not getting ranked right now? They're receiving votes. They should be ranked. That's weird. All right, next teams. Kansas State, SMC. I think that's all pretty good. UConn. UConn's an odd one. They lost at Creighton. They've been going on a really good streak. They were very highly ranked, obviously. They lost to Xavier and whatnot. And then they lost that. They beat Georgetown, beat Marquette. That's a good win. Lost to Creighton. They're number 2. I think they're pretty good placement. Xavier, Creighton lost to Providence, right? So Creighton beat them, beat UConn, lost to Providence in double overtime, beat St. John's. I'm gonna swap these two. I feel like that's a little disrespectful. They just beat Creighton and they're still ranked under them. That's a little disrespectful. And I mean, they deserve to be ranked a spot higher than the team they just beat, right? After all, nothing really much to be said there. Northwestern's in a good spot right now. I mean, they did take 2 really good wins against highly ranked opponents, so I think they're in a good spot. San Diego State, even though I don't really think they're that good. Oh, here's what we're gonna do. Hold on. Yeah, dude. Give me that. Give me Texas A&M, dog. Let's go ahead and line these bitches up. Got to get that thumbnail, you know what I'm saying. A&M, yeah, I mean, you guys might think I'm crazy for doing this or something, but, like, first off, all right, so we'll talk about the other teams later. A&M, I bet you didn't know that's TCU. I bet you didn't know that Texas A&M right now is currently in second place in the SEC. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that. They're above Tennessee. They're above Kentucky by 3 games. They're 12-2 in the conference, and their record is 20-7. They're the same record as Tennessee. They're the same record as Tennessee, and they're 3 wins ahead of them in the conference. And they're ranked number 25, whereas Tennessee's ranked number 11. I get Tennessee's played some tough games and whatnot, won some, lost some, but, like, come on. Texas A&M took a couple bad losses at the season. So A&M got ranked. They lost to Murray State. Then they got killed by Colorado. Beat Loyola, Chicago. Beat DePaul. Beat SMU. They took a bad loss to Boise State. Beat Oregon State. Lost to Memphis. I think Memphis is a really good team. Then they take a terrible, shitty-ass loss to Wofford. And then they won 2 games against Pooper Schools. And that was just a terrible start to the season because that pretty much knocked out all hope for their, like, rank appearance. Well, or so you thought. There'd be one way to get back in, and it would literally be to win every game. They beat Florida at Florida. They beat LSU. They beat ranked number 20 Missouri. They beat South Carolina. They beat Florida again. They lost at Kentucky. Kentucky's a really good team. I mean, they're third in the conference for a reason. Beat Auburn at Auburn when Auburn was number 15. Beat Vanderbilt. Take a pretty bad loss to Arkansas, but Arkansas is also a really good team. I'm not going to justify that, though. That's just whatever loss. Beat Georgia. Beat Auburn again. Beat LSU. Then you beat Arkansas, and then you beat Missouri at Missouri. A&M gets to play Tennessee on Tuesday, and I'm, like, praying to God that A&M wins that game to just, like, knock out Tennessee. I mean, they should, really, if they're anything. This will be the ultimate decider, and I'll give them the hype. I think, yeah, like, I don't know, man. I feel like A&M's just getting a little disrespected and whatnot. And for the final 3 teams, Iowa State, TCU, San Diego State, those are all good plays. So, I mean, this is probably, like, the perfect picture right here. This is probably good. I'm looking at everything. I like everything that I see right now. Yeah, this looks like a good top 25 to me, at least. Let's just go ahead and adjust it. I really hope I clicked the record button. This is like a very long video. It's a lot of deciding, a lot of thinking and whatnot. A lot of balls. Oh, yikes, I didn't mean to say that. So, yeah. Shoot, I hope this was fun to watch or something. It was kind of retarded. I was kind of tweaking out the whole time talking. But, yeah, that's that. Like and subscribe. Tell me any video ideas in the comments because I don't really have any. And that's all for me. Adios.